What a day it's been, Charger fans. We've finally got the news that we have been waiting for. I mean, definitely since Sunday, but probably all year at this point, that Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, and Mike Devlin, the offensive line coach, have been let go by the Chargers. This is something that's been talked about by the fan base for quite some time now, and it looks like Sunday's playoff loss against the Patriots was the tipping point for Jim Harbaugh to make the decision to let him go. Sunday's game against the Patriots was the tipping point for Jim Harbaugh to make the decision to let both of them go. Just Twitter has exploded today with all fans super excited that this move was made. I'm excited this move was made. I think it's beneficial for the team and Justin Herbert. But we're going to talk about the move. We're going to talk about some of the potential candidates that the Chargers may consider for OC, along with the offensive line coach. If you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe to Judge Podcast on YouTube. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also follow me on socials. I'm at Electric Edge Pod on X, TikTok, and Instagram. So with that being said, let's get into this. The fan base is overjoyed. I'm overjoyed. So let's talk about it right now. All right, so like I mentioned, Jim Harbaugh, well, I think it's Jim Harbaugh. Don't know if there was any influence from above his level to let Greg Roman and Mike Devlin go. Mike Devlin's been abysmal as the offensive line coach. The offensive line has gotten worse under his leadership. I mean, the Chargers had a 30th ranked offensive line in the NFL this year. Yes, you can't help the injuries with Alt and Slater, but the interior was abysmal, bottom of the league, and I mean, Herbert got hit over 100 times this year. So Coach Harbaugh or maybe Joe Ortiz or other individuals involved finally made the decision to let Mike Devlin go and then also make the change with Greg Roman. Greg Roman, I had a feeling that the change was coming, but I was a little bit hesitant considering the relationship Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman do have with one another, but I think the change was warranted. And unfortunately for Justin Herbert, this is fifth offensive coordinator in 6 years in the league. So that's going to be a little bit rough, but I do want to pull up real quick, just going through some articles here of the difference between Greg Roman and the other OCs that Herbert was underneath. This chart here has Justin Herbert with and without Greg Roman. So without Greg Roman, Justin Herbert's completion percentage was 66.6. With him, it was 66.1. Pass yards per attempt, without 7.1, with 7.5. Pass yards per game, without 277.8, with 230.2. Pass TDs, he had 114 without Greg Roman. With Greg Roman, he's at 49. Now, granted, there's an extra year in there, but TD to INT ratio, 2.7 without him, 3.1 with. Passer rating without Greg Roman, 95.7. With Greg Roman, 97.9. Expected points added per drop back, 0.11 without, 0.07 with. Quarterback pressure rate without Greg Roman, 33.6%. And with Greg Roman, 38%. So I think it was just the game Sunday was definitely the tipping point. The fan base was really fired up. You know, all through X on Sunday, yesterday, the fan base was calling for Greg Roman to get fired. Don't know if that played into the decision. I highly doubt it, but it speaks volumes to the press conference that Jim Harbaugh had after the game with the Patriots, where he wouldn't comment on a change of play calling. Well, that decision came pretty quickly. This does put the Chargers in a good position that they let Greg Roman go 2 days after a loss against the Patriots. There's still some prime candidates out there that the Chargers can go after for an OC. Now, some of the big names include Brian Daboll, Mike McDaniel, Cliff Kingsbury. So it's going to be interesting seeing what the approach that the Chargers are going to take. Just doing some quick research today because this all came out, I would say 10:30 a.m. PST. Some of the names like CBS Sports is reporting potentially could be a candidate. Mike LaFleur from the Rams, Clay Kubiak from the 49ers, Grant Udinski from the Jaguars, Clayton Adams from the Cowboys, Declan Doyle from the Bears. Bleacher Report has also some big names in here. They talk about Mike McDaniel if he doesn't find a head coaching gig. I don't think Mike McDaniel would fit into the Harbaugh scheme of things. One of the interesting names here is Todd Monken, who was the Baltimore OC with his brother John Harbaugh. So if Todd Monken doesn't follow John Harbaugh to his next stop, that Baltimore Charter connection could connect once again, and maybe he comes into the fold and becomes the OC. Like I mentioned, Cliff Kingsbury is another name. Now, the Chargers could promote from within. They have Marcus Brady, who's their pass game coordinator. When Greg Roman had initially got the job, it was between Marcus Brady and Greg Romans. Marcus Brady could potentially get elevated to OC. The quarterback coach, Shane Day, I don't want him to be elevated, but he has another name that's mentioned on here. And then just scrolling through X today, some other names that have popped up: the Dolphins OC, Frank Smith; Rams pass game coordinator, Nate Scheelhaase; Seahawks pass game coordinator, Jake Peetz; Broncos pass game coordinator, QB coach, Davis Webb. Some other names: David Shaw popped up, Mike Kafka; Rams quarterback coach, Dave Ragone. Those names popped up by Alex Isdorf with guilty as charged. But we'll see what happens. I'm interested to see if there's a press conference this week that talks about it. I'm sure there's going to be. But I think the right move was made. And then to talk about the offensive lineman, I want to give shout out to 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞 from Bolt Blitz Uncut. He's the offensive line tight end guy, and he put out some interesting information regarding who the next offensive line coach should be. So let me pull this tweet up here that we can go through. So his 4 guys that he has is Grant Newsome, so former Michigan O-line coach; Brandon Jones, who's the current Mizzou O-line coach; Justin Fry, who's the current O-line coach of the Cardinals; and then Dwayne Ledford, who's just let go from the Falcons. He was their O-line coach there. Another internal candidate for that offensive line coach position that could possibly happen is Nick Hardwick. Nick Hardwick is on the staff, and Harbaugh has said that he will remain on the staff. He's praised him with the job he's done. So that's something to keep an eye on. If the Chargers don't want to go external for a offensive line hire, they possibly will promote Nick Hardwick there. But I think it's apparent that whoever they bring in as an offensive line coach needs to be able to develop offensive linemen. I think in the draft, as I mentioned, the Chargers are going to draft heavy in the trenches. So those offensive linemen are going to need some development. You're going to have Alton Slater back, which is huge. So that interior, that offensive line is going to look a lot different in 2026. But I think this was the right move for the franchise. If Jim Harbaugh is serious about getting Justin Herbert to a Super Bowl, it's not going to be with Greg Roman. I mean, Greg Roman's numbers between Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert as their quarterbacks in the playoffs is abysmal. Like, there was one report that came out about Lamar Jackson's, and this ties into some of the things we've seen where protection isn't changed at the line. It says in 4 seasons with offensive coordinator Greg Roman, Baltimore primarily huddled up and ran the play that was called. Under Monken, Jackson can slide the pass protection to one side if he sees defender blitzing, or switch a receiver's route if the quarterback lines up a certain way. We've seen protection not change at the line, and you have a linebacker that comes through the A-gap and sacks Herbert. That Philly game comes to mind. Now you're kind of painting the picture as to why those things didn't happen, and it may be coming from Roman. But, I mean, here's a stat for points scored in Greg Roman's last 7 playoff games: 23, 13, 17, 17, 12, 12, and 3. Average of 13.9 points. So, like I had mentioned, this was the right move for the franchise. I'm sure Herbert's going to have some input in who that next guy is, but I understand Harbaugh wanted to have continuity with his OC, keeping Herbert in the same playbook, but it was, after Sunday, it was very apparent that it was time to move on from Greg Roman and also Mike Devlin. So I think this is great for the fan base. There were some rumblings on X yesterday that something was coming. Sean Hand's brother had put out a tweet saying he knows some things, and, well, kind of looks to be right. He said more information's coming, so we'll see what that is when it does come out. But, just wanted to jump on here and touch on the firing today because I was super fired up. I think I scared my dogs yelling when the alert came through from Adam Schefter. And funny enough, like I said, I'm from New Jersey, so I had the New York Post app still on my phone, and I got an alert from the New York Post saying that Chargers fire OC after playoff loss. So quite a big deal. This is definitely one of the more lucrative jobs in the NFL, to be an OC for the Chargers. Not only you have Justin Herbert, you got a core of running backs, you got a core of young receivers and a tight end, you got 2 all-world tackles. You just got to fix the interior offensive line. So it's a great situation for a coordinator to walk into. The Chargers just have to get the right guy in the building. So I have faith that Ortiz and Harbaugh and the rest of that staff will get it right and get the right guy to put Herbert in a situation to finally make a deep run into the playoffs. So with that being said, I want to hear from you Charger fans. Let me know who you think the new offensive coordinator for the Chargers should be. Who do you think the new offensive line coach should be from the Chargers? Should it be an internal hire? Should it be an external hire? And then let me know your thoughts as to why you want that candidate. But just wanted to have a quick episode because this news kind of developed out of nowhere today, but it does warrant a discussion to talk about it. So if you haven't already, be sure to like, subscribe to Electric Edge Podcast on YouTube. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also follow me on socials. I'm at Electric Edge Pod on X, TikTok, and Instagram. Also tomorrow being Wednesday, I will be on Bolt Blitz Uncut in the evening. So if you want to hear myself and Booga Peters talk more about the firing of Greg Roman and Mike Devlin, jump into that episode. I will post that link to my socials for you to jump into our live stream and hear us talk about the coaching changes. And also you can join the live chat and give us your opinions. So that being said, Charger fans, the future is bright. Stay patient. Good things are on the way. And as always, go Chargers and bolt up.